Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Reacts, where today we have ourselves a track from acts Velvet Cash as well as Rvkah, titled Algorithm. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves the track on the screen here on YouTube, the official music video, and we're going to listen through it from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's do it, let's go. What do we got? It's interesting with the sound design and placement of things immediately.
Champagne thoughts on a motel floor. Say you want the truth and you beg for more.
Interesting flanging on the 16th note hi-hats.
Got lipstick stains and a velvet touch. I'll give in, but I'll never give up. She said, baby, don't chase what you can't take. I like the thrill, like to play the game. Dancing with fire, let's feed the flame. Tattooed on your heart, can't forget my name.
Yeah, a nice entrance with that sub drop there.
It's the sun to shine like the moon. I'll bring the fire, you bring the monsoon. Algorithm brought you to me, and algorithm took you away.
Great interval there, great harmony. Like fourths or something like that.
Took you away.
Would it be nice?
Kiss me once and forget my name. You claim that it's love, but it's all a game. Pain in my face while I hide my eyes. Say what you mean so there's no surprise. He said, baby, don't
Great transfer with the fill there.
I like the thrill, like to play the game. Dancing with fire, let's feed the flame. Tattooed on your heart, can't forget my name.
Don't ask the sun to shine like the moon. I'll bring the fire, you bring the monsoon. Algorithm brought you to me, and algorithm took you away.
I mean, it's just so smooth with that legato, you know?
Took you away.
Excellent. Fantastic. Fantastic start to proceedings in terms of first impressions with the collaboration there. Velvet Cash and Rvkah with Algorithm. And we're going to talk about this track more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named Velvet Cash as well as Rvkah, titled Algorithm. So what do we think this track is about? I think this track are about two people who are sort of figuring out how they found each other, whether it was through like the literal algorithm, like through like dating apps, or like through like the internet or something like that, or basically through the way that life works within its own sort of algorithm and happenings. And they're sort of figuring out how they came together, how they have been sort of like taken apart, and they're sort of like commiserating on that. There's his own interpretations about what went wrong and what occurred, you know, how opposites attract and everything like that, and what could have been done in order to you know, kiss me and forget my name, etc., stuff like that, you know. Don't expect the sun to shine like the moon. There's some sort of like great wordplay in there. I feel it's quite eloquent. In terms of things that are done well with this track, I think one of the things there is just, first and foremost, it's quite a sort of solid vocal performance there across the board from both Velvet Cash and Rvkah. They're very comfortable with their own head and chest voices, their ranges respectively. And they work together well. They've got their own parts as well. I think Rvkah has verse 2. A lot of the majority of sort of Velvet Cash is in the first one, and then basically what's cool about it is that you have Velvet Cash sort of with his perspective for the most part, and then you have the chorus where it's sort of like them come together, and then Rvkah has her own interpretation of events afterwards. So there's like this journey that you go through a song that's already not particularly long, you know, at 2 minutes 48, it's right within that 2 to 4 minute sweet spot. Or if it's too short, you might be missing out on like enough context to fully sort of understand what's going on. But if it's too long, it's past 4, you need to sort of make sure you're doing things with individual parts of the track in order to make it more exciting. But I feel like they explore the range as well. There are some really interesting harmonies or choices there, like at the end of the chorus parts where there's like a 4th or like a 9th or something like that going on there. That's really cool. And they also sort of like articulate themselves well enough and have their own sort of like bits of sort of pizzazz and their own sort of tales of their melodies to kind of showcase their individual talents as well. And I feel the way they express themselves through it is also appropriate for what we're discussing. So it's really cool. I like the way that's handled. I think that another thing that's done well here is the way that the track is sort of like written sort of instrumentally, like the variety of different instruments as well as the sub layers and bits of ear candy. So the drums, for example, have this really interesting 16-note groove with like the hi-hats that are like sort of flanged in certain parts there. So it kind of go with like an offbeat accent on the oscillation there to kind of like add a bit of syncopation to the mix, a bit of faux syncopation. And I dig that. I think that's a really sort of like neat idea. They just have a bit of a different sounding tone there. I mean, the kicks and snares remind me of a lot of sort of like 80s drum kits there with the overall sort of like pitch of them, the way the reverb tails and compression works on them. They poke into the mix neatly without being too much. And there's little tom fills and stuff as well to sort of break up certain parts within sort of verses or to transfer between parts. The track sort of grows and sort of like comes out with like a sub drop at the start of each chorus as well, which kind of has a nice sort of reverb tail on it there. A lot of the percussive elements are really intriguing. And I think it's also like that kind of synth elements there that are kind of very sort of moody and mysterious there that almost add a bit of mystery in the sense of what they're discussing. So it's like the music is kind of trying to infer a sense of darkness over the disillusionment with the situation. And there's nice little sort of vocal responses or chops that come in occasionally as like more sort of instrumental melody kind of elements there to kind of feed off or go between the main vocal lines there, which I think adding the vocals as an instrument within the mix is really cool as well. A lot of the color within the track does come from those vocal melodies and harmonies in mid to upper ranges there. The bass is well covered by the multiple elements there. And there's like little claps and other bits of ear candy on parts as well, like ticking of like time in certain bits with sequences. And there's depth to like little kind of starry mid to upper melodies there that are very sort of subtle in the mix or composition as well. So we're trying not to have everything the same loudness in order to get the listener to kind of get lost in the mix and be sort of surrounded within the ether of it. And there's those sort of more traditional kind of riser elements between certain parts that we build up into the chorus and come back down. So there's not only sort of the main sort of rhythmic or melodic or harmonic elements there within those synths, the basses and the drums, but there's also the risers and other bits of sort of like ear candy to sort of spice things up and kind of add a certain level of intricacy in line with the vocal parts. And then we basically just have the studio production there, the way that things are recorded, mixed and mastered. I think that in general the vocal takes are handled really well there. The synth bass drums and other bits of Foley and ear candy are balanced within the frequency spectrum and the stereo field without any sort of resonant frequencies or anything kind of weird like that. So that's done well as well. There was dynamic range to it, like after those choruses. It wasn't just one big bell curve with overall intensity just went up and just down at the end of the song. We kind of went up and had our peaks and troughs there, and it makes a song more interesting when it's done like that. If you have too many of those, it becomes a bit uninteresting simply because of the predictability of it. But because we had a shorter song here, which had like a couple of verses and a couple of choruses, we didn't overstay our welcome. I think it was just allowing the compression, the EQ, the vocals to be produced in a way where like any sort of stuff added to them accentuated and elevated the overall tone and sound of it. They were nice and crisp, and it sounded commercial grade in terms of its compression, gluing, and limiting. The master bus was handled here. There was life to the performance. It had an interesting sort of like, again, like electro kind of like synthwave-ish kind of like 80s tone to it there, but had a sense of darkness not only because of the key choice with the minors and the instrumental parts included, but also because of how sort of empty those reverb tails made it sound. But like then you had the bass sort of fill up the low end and it just sounded vibrant, especially with those vocal harmonies up top. So things were segmented and niched really well as well within the range. And it was just allowing the drums again to be punchy so they weren't just sort of like choked in the mix. They had a nice attack to the compression on those. So ultimately, you know, just a really sort of fantastic impression of their work today. There's nothing that I feel could be done to sort of improve it. As a standalone concept, it works extremely well, and it'll be interesting to hear what they do in future. But for now, thank you very much for watching my review of this track from an act named, or rather acts named Velvet Cash Rvkah, titled Algorithm, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via their various social medias and YouTube page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world, and I'll catch you in the next SP Reacts. Spiderhands out.